The lead up and then the aftermath for the Switch 2 is almost unreal. I mean, here we have the Switch 1, and it's the third best-selling console of all time as of the making of this video. So the excitement for its successor, leading up to it, I mean, it was legitimately through the roof. It's almost unbelievable to fathom that Nintendo could actually fumble that type of momentum. Yet, here we are. And all everybody can seem to talk about are the high sticker prices that they revealed. But you know what? If you think about this, if you look at the game industry as a whole, this almost seems to be a pattern, history repeating itself. It's almost like the console makers are cursed by their own arrogance. If you look at something like the PlayStation 2, the best-selling console ever made, to the PlayStation 3, what did Sony do? They priced themselves too high, and they regretted it. If you look at the Nintendo DS, the second best-selling console, to the 3DS, yep, the exact same thing happened. It's like a revolving door. These companies have a record-breaking amount of success the previous generation, and then they look at that and they push for these higher prices with the successor. Because why not? Surely they're popular enough to get away with it. And hey, maybe, just maybe, Nintendo will be the company to break that cycle. Everybody, including myself, loves Nintendo games, and they're only getting more popular by the year. So maybe Nintendo will be the one to repeat their predecessor's success despite the loud, and I mean very loud, outcry for game prices. That right now is the big focal point. And that's kind of sad to think about, or at least to some degree. The Direct itself was good. They revealed some really exciting looking games, and in most situations, that would be enough for a brand new console. And I really wish that it was. But that's not what we're currently seeing when it comes to the Switch 2. And today, I will say this. I do come bearing some good news. So there is that. I'm excited to talk about that. But I also have some bad news for Nintendo because despite the good news, their situation just somehow got even worse. Yep. First, though, I do want to thank my supporters on Patreon and on YouTube memberships. Thank you just so much for what you do. I truly do appreciate each and every single one of you. Let's just go and get right into the news, though. And, this week is a little bit different given the reveal for the Switch 2. We only get a new console reveal every so often, and there's just a lot to currently unpack, especially with all of the different confusion that's currently going around. So, as of today, that's my number one priority, to go over everything that's been revealed for the Switch 2 these past 24 hours. And I first want to start off with the topic that I find to be the most uninformed. There's definitely a lot of hysteria going around, and while I think some of it's merited, there's also some other things that might be, being blown out of proportion just a little bit. However, I'm not just going to follow the crowd and hate to hate. That's not what I do on this channel. I got to be real with you all. And I'm talking about the reveal for physical game keycards. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, if you haven't already seen this on social media or different news websites, Switch 2 game keycards are physical games without the game itself on the card. Instead, what it does is that it basically acts as a key that will unlock its download. So a lot of people are just absolutely freaking out about this. One of the main reasons that we buy physical games in the first place is for game preservation. And I agree. I'm a physical collector. I buy most of my games physically. And I don't like when developers do this. But that's also where I have to kind of step in and correct some of the information that's going around. The reality is that this has been an ongoing issue, sadly, for a long time. This isn't exclusive to the Switch 2, nor is it necessarily exclusive to Nintendo. Nintendo is basically just giving these type of physical games an actual name, which to some degree allows customers to be a little bit more easily informed about what they're actually buying. There were Switch 1 games that only had digital codes in their box. They weren't on a cart. Or if you look at something like Xbox as another example, they are infamous for pushing out physical games without the games on disc. Instead, they act basically as a download key. Games like Indiana Jones and Halo Infinite are not on disc. So this isn't necessarily a new problem per se, but what I will say is that even though I don't like this business practice, there are still two reasons that you might want a physical game key card as opposed to digital. A lot of people are making out like these key cards are useless and this, that, and the other, but one is that these key cards will be a little bit easier to share. You can give it to whoever you want to. And two, you can also resell them. You can't do that with digital games. So I think the bigger question right now for these key cards really kind of comes down to how often we'll see them. Less would be better. But unfortunately, there are a few already at launch, including Bravely Default and Street Fighter. Now, thankfully, Donkey Kong, Mario Kart World, and Cyberpunk are all on their carts. That's great to see. But the fact that they are on their carts and also at higher prices could also actually indicate some of the controversial pricing that we're seeing. CD Projekt Red revealed that they put Cyberpunk onto a 64GB cart, which is new for the Switch 2. And the reason I point that out is because that 64GB cart might be more expensive than what we're seeing from these key cards. So for Bravely Default, as an example here, that's a smaller remaster, and it should easily fit onto a cart. By the way, it's an amazing game. Please go play it if you haven't already. Great JRPG. But what I'm trying to say here is that Square Enix might have strategically gone with that key card to keep the price down, which is $40. Now, that's just a theory, but that is one possibility on why we're seeing some of these higher prices. Nonetheless, though, that's one of the more controversial, confusing topics that's been going around. But let's go and talk about some good news, because not everything is deflating. I do actually come with some good news, because NVIDIA talked about their Switch 2 partnership today. And here are some of the key takeaways. I'm going to put this on screen. Shout out to Central Leaks. But you can see here, the Switch 2 will have AI image upscaling from DLSS, just as rumored, and ray tracing with dedicated ray tracing cores and tensor cores. It'll also have 10 times the graphics performance of the Switch 1. It'll have AI-powered face tracking and background removal, and it'll have variable refresh rate via NVIDIA G-Sync. So that's legitimately exciting stuff. 10 times. 10 times the graphics performance is incredible to think about on paper. One of the things that we saw a lot of yesterday was that third-party companies are supporting the Switch 2 in droves. We're seeing much more third-party support than we have for Nintendo in a very long time, and that's for a reason. It's getting Final Fantasy VII Remake. It's getting Cyberpunk, Elden Ring, and it's even getting its own From Software exclusive, which is still unbelievable to think about. The reason here, though, is because what NVIDIA said. It's more than a capable machine. It's probably somewhere closer to the PlayStation 4 than it is maybe to the Xbox Series and the PlayStation 5, but this is a handheld. And unlike the base consoles from last generation, it has access to 4K, 120 frames per second, HDR, ray tracing, and pretty much all of the bells and whistles that we see from newer platforms. It's not an apples-to-apples comparison, but just think about the PlayStation 4, but with a lot of those bells and whistles. I mean, that's all packed into a hybrid handheld, so that's pretty cool. So we're finally diving into the era of true HD for Nintendo, and that's exciting to think about. I mean, even the very little that they've shown thus far, you can already see the improvements that they made when it comes to their Switch 2 edition games. Zelda Breath of the Wild looks much, much better on the Switch 2 thanks to its new upgrade. Now, is that upgrade actually worth it? That's a little bit of a different story. It really kind of depends on how much you like that game. But visuals will get even better as developers get better with the hardware. That's something that we will see as the generation progresses. Early generation games always look worse than late generation games. We know this. So far, though, the early showcase seems to be Metroid Prime 4. Previews have been going around today, and absolutely everybody seems to be lights out impressed by its visuals. 4K, 60 frames per second, or 120 frames per second at 1080p. It's looking pretty incredible. So there it is. DLSS is confirmed, and the Switch 2 on paper is a massive upgrade from the Switch 1, which I think is what most of us truly wanted from a successor. However, what we did not want are the game prices. This is where I have to talk about the bizarre situation that Nintendo currently finds themselves in. I've been thinking about this, though, and this really reminds me a lot of the 3DS when it first launched, but more so from the software side of things. The 3DS's big problem wasn't necessarily in terms of software, but more so when it came to the console price itself. I actually think the Switch 2 at $450 is relatively reasonable. Most people do not seem to be mad about that. Now, it might not be the $400 sweet spot. That would have been even better, but still, $450 for a device like this seems reasonable when you compare it to comparable PC handhelds. However, the 3DS, when it launched, I mean, the price was just too high. And Nintendo had to slash prices almost immediately to save that thing. It was not going in a good direction. Now, will Nintendo do that with the Switch 2 and its game prices? I mean, we'll have to kind of wait and see if the online reaction translates to consumer reaction. But for the time being, what we've learned is that Mario Kart World is not their only $80 game, or at least technically. There's a little bit of an asterisk here, but I'll go ahead and put some prices on screen, and you can see the prices are just kind of all over the place. There's $60 games. Donkey Kong is $70, which it's weird for me to even say this, but it's relieving to see a $70 game. That's crazy to think about. But then, yeah, Mario Kart is $80. And this is where I really have to just draw the line. Some of the Switch 2 edition games, like Kirby and the Forgotten Land, out of all games, are $80, which is just absolutely ludicrous. This is honestly ridiculous. And like, I get Nintendo's mindset when it comes to this situation. It's technically a $60 game on the Nintendo Switch, and then the upgrade with its extra content is an additional $20, which is why they're pricing it at $80. Which, by the way, if you're unaware of this, you can buy the upgrades separately if you already own the Switch 1 version. You're not forced to buy into this game for $80. And even if you buy the physical edition for the Switch 2, it doesn't sound like the upgrade will actually be on the cart. So if you already own the Switch 1 version, there's really not a reason to even consider the physical copy for the Switch 2. Just going to throw that out there. But the main reason that this is so stupid in the first place is that all of these games should have dropped in price a long time ago. Nintendo, we know this about Nintendo, but they are terrible about cutting the prices of their games over time, and that's why these $80 prices are even worse. And Breath of the Wild is a perfect example of that. They're trying to charge $70 for a game that launched back in 2017, a game that was originally developed for the Wii U. I mean, you have to be kidding me. Please, for the love of all things, do not buy this game for $70. Go out, find a used copy. Don't even support Nintendo. Find a used copy. And then upgrade if you want. This is just pure greed from Nintendo, and we should not stand for that type of stuff. Do not buy. And that's all there is to it. It's one thing to charge $80 for a brand new game. Okay, fine. At least you can make a semblance of an excuse for that, even though it really doesn't make much sense. But nonetheless, these Switch 2 edition games, they should have slashed the prices a long time ago. They should not be $80. This is just a terrible, terrible look for Nintendo. And we're now at the point where all of this has become viral. They held their Treehouse stream today, where they revealed gameplay for Mario Kart World, Metroid Prime 4, and Donkey Kong Bonanza. And I kid you not, I saw it happen live. I didn't even have to see this on Twitter or anything. I saw it happen live. Instead of the conversation being about those games, which looks great, the live chat was instead infested with chants that said, drop the price. Drop the price. So if you saw news reports about this, there was no exaggeration. It really was infested with those chants. This topic is now viral. And I don't know how Nintendo is going to respond to that type of backlash. I think that really all just depends if customers actually vote with their wallet, because that's what companies truly listen to. They don't listen to us. They listen to our money. And I do have some skepticism about customers actually voting with their wallet. But yeah, this has not been a great reveal, which is still just so unbelievable considering they really had to work to fumble a reveal as anticipated as this. All they had to do was say, hey, here's some great looking games. They're $70. I think most people would have at least been accepting of that. But nope, they just completely skipped past $70, said, hey, we're charging $80 for these games. I mean, I've said it before on the channel, but I really thought that we would eventually get to $80 games. And I thought that would happen within the next few years. Maybe GTA would be the first one to attempt it. But I don't think that I, or anybody for that matter, ever expected Nintendo, out of all companies, to be the first one to push for $80 base games. They're the one game company right now that seems to be working on reasonable budgets compared to other AAA studios. Their games don't cost $300, $400, $500 million to make. Yet they're still charging $80. I don't know. That's crazy, but let me know what you all think about all this. Given everything that we know so far, tell me your hype level, 1 out of 10 for the Switch 2. 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest. Anyways, I'm going to call that a video there. That's going to be that for the episode. But until next time, make sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and peace out.